Welcome to the InfoGov Hot Seat Vodcast, featuring candid interviews with practitioners, consultants, and solution providers on hot topics in the information governance industry. Here's your host, Jim Merrifield.
Hello and welcome to the InfoGov Hot Seat. I'm your host, Jim Merrifield, and with me today is Christopher Hocky, Director of Information Governance at Bond. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Jim. Good to be here. Happy to have a conversation about IG. I've never been on a hot seat before, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm glad you took time out of your day, and I promise I'll be nice and brief to the point. Won't ask you too many uncomfortable questions, but here's my first one. So let's get to know you a little bit. A brief introduction of your role, how long you've been in the field of records management, and then one fun fact about yourself.
All right. So my current role at Bond, Schoeneck King is Director of Information Governance and Management, which really evolved when I initially took the role. It was Director of Records and Enterprise Content. And a lot of people are like, well, what is that? And I could see that the industry was heading more towards this information governance. And so I pleaded to have a title change. And so, generally what my role is at Bond is to really oversee the firm's records, data, information. I oversee our Research Information Services department, which does all of our, basically kind of our library services, if you will. She'll kill me if I say library, but because it's much more evolved than that now. But, so I oversee that role. I've been in records since 2016, but when I started in 2016, it was actually in higher education. So I had spent about 30 years in higher ed. My last role in higher education was as the Director of Registration and Records at a local community college here in Syracuse. So I did that for 3 years. I was ready for a change, and that's when I saw the position at Bond and was super excited. I knew Bond. I was familiar with them, knew their reputation, so I was excited to move into that kind of role. So I've been with Bond since 2019. And the fun fact is that, so this would have been, I think it was probably my senior year of college. So I won't give the year away, but it was my senior year of college, and some buddies and I were headed to a Weird Al Yankovic concert, who was in Syracuse at the time. And before the concert, we decided to go out to dinner to a local restaurant. And wouldn't you know that Weird Al was at the same restaurant that we were at. And the restaurant was like empty. There was like nobody there. It was like this kind of hole in the wall restaurant that we knew locally because, we all grew up here. And he must have heard that it was a hole in the wall and no one would be there. And so he could have some privacy. So, we approached him and said, hey, we're coming to your concert later and, big fans. And, I said, oh, why don't you guys, sit down? I'm about to have dessert. You guys want to have dessert? And so, so we sat down. We had dessert with Weird Al Yankovic, and super funny guy, as you would imagine him to be, but really down to earth. I mean, just a super casual, made us all feel like, really just comfortable, like, oh my, this is not some big celebrity, which he was for us because we loved Weird Al. But he was just a real nice guy, just what you would imagine him to kind of be. So that's my fun fact.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Did he have that big couch? Did he fit that big couch into the restaurant?
No, he didn't. No, but I'll tell you what, it's one of the best concerts that I've ever been to. I mean, the amount of stage production that goes into his concert in terms of props and sets and costume changes, and it was definitely not what I expected. It was way better than what I thought it would be. It was just awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that and also sharing your current role. It seems like you got a lot on your plate and doing some really cool things at Bond. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Now, recently you posted a LinkedIn post, and it was related to the growth of digital data, its impact on information governance. Can you expand on that a bit? Because I thought that was a really interesting topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I wanted to kind of get across was just, we're seeing massive amounts of data accumulation right now. I think one of the stats that I found was by 2020 there was 64.2 zettabytes globally of data, and over 70% of that is unstructured, right? So what I was trying to kind of convey was, we're as practitioners in information governance and records management, we can't lose sight of this massive impact. I mean, I don't think that people really grasp how quickly we are accumulating data, how fast it is growing, and how so much of it is in that unstructured format, which means that it's very difficult to wrangle and to get your arms around. But the other thing that I thought was important to highlight was just the value of that data if you are able to harness it, right? So one of the other stats that I found kind of in preparing for this was that in 2021, over 3 million emails were sent every second, and 67% of those were spam. And I think, our jobs as practitioners in IG is we have to help our constituents separate the value from all the noise, right? And so when you've got over 3 million emails and 67% of those are spam, that's a lot of noise that you got to sift through, right? And so it's, wanting to just convey that we need to do a better job of pushing the importance of harnessing our data, right? And the type of value that we can get out of that. But in order to do that, we have to put in policies, practices. We have to put in procedures around our data and our information. Why bother collecting all of this data if you're not going to leverage it in some capacity? Then it just becomes noise, or taking a records management term, it becomes rot. It just becomes stuff that is there, and it's just taking up space, right? When you're searching for something, you're getting all of this extraneous stuff that becomes part of your search results that really doesn't need to be there. The Aberdeen group looked at kind of the impact of data in terms of organizations that leverage that data. And they found that by effectively governing and ensuring the accuracy of the data, it can actually improve insights for those organizations 3 times more than their competitors, right? So if you're in a place where you're not only managing it, but you're finding ways to leverage it to gain insights, which ultimately leads to better decision making, you're setting yourself up for a much more competitive business advantage over your peers. And I think as those of us that are in charge of this role, in charge of information governance and management and data records, it's our job to I think help our constituents see that there is beyond just kind of keeping things neat and tidy. There's value in leveraging the insights that you can get from all of this information. And that we get into business analytics and data, dashboards and all this other kind of stuff. And I think we're still quite a ways away from that being kind of the standard. I don't think we're quite there yet, but that was really kind of what I was trying to get people to kind of think about and talk about.
Yeah, no, those are valuable insights. I think you're talking about it's a prime conversation because with all the AI conversations and ChatGPT and most firms have a director of knowledge management, right? Yep. That IG folks can work hand in hand with. So I couldn't agree with you more. So let's talk a little bit about projects. What's your priorities for the year? I know it's still Q1, right? At the end of Q1, yeah. You probably have your projects all lined up, hopefully, for the year. What are kind of top of mind for you this year?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things that my department is working on is we just launched iComply for our records management system, and right now we're going through the process of integrating that with iManage because we're an iManage shop. And so, because we really want to give our attorneys and our staff a kind of a one-stop shop for all of their information and records. So we want to give them one place they can go where they can see, here's all the physical files you have for this matter. Here's all of the electronic documents that you have for this file, for this matter. And eventually we're going to tie that into our file shares. We're going through a process now of restructuring our file shares so that they're matter centric. And then we'll be able to link that in as well. So, we like this idea, and we're excited about the opportunity to have our attorneys be able to go one place to see everything that they have. And also helps us administratively do a better job of managing it because we have one place we can go to say, okay, what do we have for this? Where do we need to apply retention? When it's time for destruction, we know what we have around all of that. So that's one project. The other project we're going through now is kind of we're titling it our email management project, where looking to apply a retention policy to our email, and really get people used to filing their emails because again, I talked about how many emails are getting generated on a daily basis, and probably more so for attorneys than. So it's, and those emails are records, they're part of the record, and there's valuable insight and data there. And so we're going through a process now of really, doing a one-on-one partnership with our attorneys to help them get comfortable with filing their emails and using our document management system as a place where they can interact with and find their emails, as opposed to using Outlook, which is more of a kind of transitory product and not necessarily a records system. So those are really the two big things that we got going on right now.
For sure, and those are big projects, right? And I'm sure you're not going to tackle those on your own, right? So let's talk about your team a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So your internal team, what does it look like? And where do you see some opportunities for growth? Because our teams are constantly probably getting bigger and bigger. So with these projects, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, and my team is great. I love them. They're fantastic. They're a real bunch of go-getters. But I have two staff members that are electronic records coordinators, and so they're really overseeing. Working on the day-to-day matter mobility, dealing with our support tickets for iManage, for iComply, helping with anything kind of electronic records related. They are in there and doing that work. I have a data governance coordinator, and she's really my kind of Jane of all trades, if you will. She's got, SQL experience and knows how to work with APIs and scripts, and I know none of that stuff. So it is great to have her on the team because it's again, as we deal more and more with this data, I need someone that really knows how to work with it in that capacity. And then, as I mentioned, so I oversee our research information services department. So we have our manager of research and information services, and then we have a reference librarian there. And so, we kind of work hand in hand in terms of, she's really helping the attorneys get the research information they need to do their job. And I'm helping them find kind of the internal content that they need to do their job. So I have a great team, and I think, areas for growth. I do think that it would be good for us to build more on our records, physical records, because while we are still moving very much towards electronic, as a matter of fact, we've restarted our sustainability committee this year, which is really focused on going paper light. And so we're really encouraging our attorneys and staff to focus more on the electronic records and less of the paper, but we still have a lot of paper. So I think that's still an area that we need to address in some capacity. And I think we're exploring some different ways to make sure that our records management is getting done efficiently. But, I think aside from that, one of the things that I really do think looking kind of forward is, while my data governance coordinator is certainly familiar with analytics, she doesn't really have the time to do that because she's really more focused on putting the policies, practices, making sure that our data is accurate and clean. So, I think having someone that really does the data analytics, going back to this point about leveraging the data that we have, right? So my data governance coordinator is working on getting the data to a point where we can trust it, right? But then once you have trusted data, that's when you need to leverage it, right? And so I think bringing someone on board that can help us make sense of that data. What is it telling us? I think that's really another area of growth for us.
Yeah, I think that's great, right? Similar to what a financial analyst does,
Exactly.
maybe on the finance side. And you got a great mix of individuals, and it seems like you got the library KM under your, in your department, which I think is great, especially with your forward thinking and your ideas. So that's awesome. Thanks for speaking to that. So let's talk a little bit about events, right? Every year there's tons of information governance events to attend, to speak at. But of course, right, we can't go to all of them as we'd love to, right? We got to get some work done. So what events are you planning on being at or speaking at? What's your plans for 2023?
So ILTA is definitely on the main agenda this year. So so when I started at Bond, I started in 2019, and by the time the ILTA conference rolled out for 2019, we were in COVID. So, my boss, me being new to legal at that time, wanted me to engage with the ILTA conference. So I got the virtual ILTA conference, and I still feel very salty about that I didn't get the real ILTA conference. So, and obviously, with a large IT department, you've got to kind of rotate your people around the ILTA. So, I made a point to tell him, look, this year I need to go to ILTA because I didn't really get the good experience. Part of the real benefit of going to the ILTA conference is the face-to-face, the water cooler conversations, if you will, that are taking place outside those sessions, which you don't get in that same kind of virtual, environment. And so for me, ILTA is really front and center. I'd like to try to attend the ARMA conference as well. I'm not looking at presenting just yet on anything. I feel like there's a couple of things I want to accomplish, so I do have something to present on. But that's always something I do like presenting. It's just feeling like what do I have that hasn't already been done, right? That's kind of where I'm at right now. So, but yeah, looking forward to definitely going to ILTA, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I can hit up ARMA as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll see you at both those events. And hey, you're presenting right now, Chris. I mean, you're giving us some valuable information. So don't sell yourself short there. There's definitely some valuable information on this in this conversation. So thanks for that. So let's fast forward into the future. Where do you see, records management, information governance over the next 3 to 5 years? How do you see things develop? I know there's a lot of things changing this year, right? With AI, with ChatGPT, with all the, privacy regulations. There's a lot going on. So what do you see in your crystal ball?
It's interesting. I've always been, very comfortable with the unknown, right? And kind of not knowing where things are going to go, and, trying to stay ahead of technology trends. But, this is a really interesting time, especially with the AI piece. It's just really hard to predict where things are going. I do think that you can't escape it, right? I think that's been something that I think has been talked about in some of the communities that I'm in, is that you can't escape the AI piece. There's going to be firms that use it and firms that don't use it, but the firms that don't use it, are simply not going to compete as well as those that use it. I know there's a lot of apprehension about it, and I think we have to help our constituents figure out the best way to leverage it, right? So I definitely think AI has thrown a massive kind of wrench into where do we see ourselves. I think even trying to project even 3 years out is a challenge, because the pace of technology today, it's just so fast. But I do think that, especially with the the amount of data breaches that we're seeing, the cybersecurity attacks. I think that needs to be really front and center for any organization, is to really make sure that you've got policies, protocols, procedures in place to not only mitigate that, but to make sure that you are prepared for it. I think there was somebody somewhere said, if you haven't, you may not think that you've been hit, but you've probably been hit and just don't know it yet, right? And I think there's some level of truth to that, right? It may not be some of the big, attacks that we've seen, but to some degree, I think there, even through, just normal data loss or, internal, loss of information. I think that, there's just so many avenues for us to where we have to help mitigate that risk. And I think those are the areas that really need to be focused on the most in the next, year or two, because it's only going to get worse. The bad actors are only getting better at what they do. And frankly, I'm not saying anything here that isn't known, but, law firms are traditionally, slow to adjust to technology. And I think that is something that, we need to help, right? I mean, those of us that are comfortable with tech and comfortable with data, we have to help them get to a place where we're doing a better job of protecting our organizations.
Yeah, these are certainly exciting times for us as information governance professionals, right? We definitely have a bright future, and
Right.
I don't think there's going to be any shortage of things to do at our organization. So listen, Chris, thanks so much for joining me today. This was awesome, sharing all your insights with us on the hot seat, and thanks for taking the time out today. If you'd like to be a guest on the InfoGov hot seat, like Chris here, please submit your information through our website. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the InfoGov Hot Seat. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and LinkedIn. Check out our main website at infogovhotseat.com to view our latest episodes and much more.